Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So let's continue now that we have our validation working just fine. We can continue with our tutorial. So let's create a sign up here. Now, before we do that, if I go to my controllers, the sign up controller, once we manage to insert a row here, we should redirect our user. Now, I did get a question which says, why are we doing things different in this particular tutorial compared to how we've been doing it in other tutorials? Well, the thing is, I want to show you different methods of doing the same thing. That way, in case you're not comfortable with object-oriented PHP, you can still use the procedural type, which is what we are doing here. So we are not yet using OOP, but we will, because I will convert this to OOP. And that's simply because for you to be a good programmer, you need to know how to use object-oriented PHP. Otherwise, you'll just be scratching the surface. So don't let anybody tell you that you don't need OOP. You can just do it with procedural PHP. That's like telling you that you can't use functions in your project. You know, functions are very useful and very good, so you can't afford not to use them. It's in the same way you can't afford not to use classes. So it's just like using functions, but classes are more powerful than functions, of course, because they contain a group of functions in them. So it's very important that you learn object-oriented PHP. Regardless whether you're going to use it or not, it's just important because every client that brings you code for you to edit, you may find yourself having to deal with object-oriented PHP. So better you get it over with and get used to using it. And not only that, it's a more efficient way to do things. You can't create a big project without using object-oriented PHP. It just becomes a mess. You can do it, but it doesn't mean it should be done. So at this point, we want to redirect. Now, there's no function called redirect, so I'm just creating it right now. And I want to just say redirect home like this, and then be able to be sent to the home page. So let's go to the functions.php and create that function. Let me just add it right here before the DB stuff. We will remove this DB stuff in here anyway over time because we will move to classes instead. Okay, so redirect and then maybe page. We just call it page. That's just a variable. You can call it anything you want. So here what we will do is we'll do header like this because that's how we redirect things in PHP. And then you say location like that, and then you tell it where to go. Now I'm just going to add page over there, but I need to add root so that we get the root path, and then we put a slash, and then we add whatever page was added there. But this is not how our URLs actually work, because you can see from here we are not using clean URLs. So what we will need to do is use index.php just the way this thing is. So I'm just going to copy that and let's add it here. Normally we'll do this with oh, wait a second, let me put this here like this. So it will always be index.php, and then page name is equal to, and then I'll remove this, and then this is how I'll add the page name at the end like so. And then after the redirect, I'll have to say die down here. That way we do a clean break, because there are times when somebody can select to avoid redirects on their page, and this function will not work. And if that doesn't work, at least you have a die there to make sure that the rest of the page does not load, because they're not supposed to see it. So that redirect should work there just fine. And once we are done, we are done. So we're redirecting to the home page. So from this, let's give it a shot. I'm going to say username, put an email at email.com. Let's put password as password like this, and then retype password. and then let's sign up. Okay, so the fact that it has taken us to the home page means we are signed up. Now we want to be able to see the user name here. So things are going to get a little complex now. So here we've added all this, which is nice. Now the way we've done things here, we can actually let's see here, we can let's go to functions here. We can make things a little bit easier on ourselves instead of doing all this. Now the problem with what we are doing here is, for example, we have a lot of functions here that are quite related, but they are separate. So for example, if I were to copy this function, right, for a different project, so let's say I have a different project and then I copy this function, it's the insert function. The problem with this function is it's incomplete because it relies on other functions here. So you see, allowed columns is another function. Yeah, that's what it relies on for now. And then there's also this validate function that relies on other functions in here. Or does it? No, it does not. But the point is, all these functions are kind of related because they do a similar thing. So you first validate, and then the problem here is that we need to tell it what table to do this validation on. So the table is users, which means if I'm going to validate another table, which is products, I'll have to put an else statement and then put this content here. So we will see how to do that, and then we'll do a better way using OOP. So for now, let's see how we can import, how we can use what we have so far here to create products, and then after that we can rearrange everything, or maybe we rearrange everything now and make it easier on ourselves. So tough decision there, but it has to be made. But before we can do that, we can read from the database here to read. Let's say, for example, we have the insert function here. It would be nice to have a select function, right? A function that just gets you, with just simple things like this, it gets you what you want instead of having to write a query. Because in our case right now, for us to read anything, we'll have to use this function query, and then we can run a query there and read from our database. So for example, if I want to show, we did not actually authenticate this user when we did a sign up, so that's not good. So once we insert here, we're supposed to authenticate. So let's say authenticate, we'll just call that function there, and we're going to authenticate the contents from here, like so. So this authenticate function we have to create. So I'm going to copy that, and let's go to the end here and do that. So I'm going to create function authenticate, because we have to log in the user once they sign up. Now it's up to you. You may want instead to redirect them to the login page. So maybe that's what we should do instead of authenticating them directly, because sometimes you want the user to get used to entering their details. So instead, let's take this user to the login page, and then we'll still need the authenticate function here with the data that has been sent. So let's call this one data, like that. And all we need to do is save information in the session. So a session is a way that websites recognize the user. So for example, if I'm browsing around here, I have a very specific session that I'm dealing with. So whether I go to a different page or go back and go to another page, home page, profile page, which don't exist, but the session remains the same. So which means if I save something in the session, that information is available to every single page on the website. So in that case, we need to use the session. Now, in order to use the session, we always have to have the keyword session start. So this is always, since we will be using sessions quite a lot, it would be best to add this to the home page like this, because the home page is loaded every time. The index page is loaded every time. So we add session start there to make sure that we always have a session available. So once we do that, we are good. Now we can come here and set aside a session variable called user. So we're going to do this and say session and then capitalized user. There's no particular reason why I do this. It's just that it just makes it seem important to me. So you can put anything here. It could be A, it doesn't really matter, but it helps to describe what you are saving here. So session user will be equal to whatever the data is from here. Now, usually the data that's supplied here is either the username or the password. Now, what we want is a row of the user so that we can access any information about the user. So we just want to grab this entire row of the user from here. Now, the user will supply an email and a password. That's all they will supply. So we need to use the email to capture this row. So what I'll do is we'll need to run a query, and I will create a query here and say query is equal to, and actually wait a second, when we authenticate we should already have that row available. So let me call this one row like this and simply do this. So this should work. Actually, this is an array, so I can't do this, so I have to do it like this. I'd have to say this is equal to row. Okay, very good. So we've added a session user, a row to session user. So all we need to do in order to know that this user is logged in is just to check if this exists. Then we know this user is logged in. And then when we want to log out, all we need to do is unset this, and then we should be done. Now, we also need a logout page, of course. So I'm going to create that logout page very quickly. So new file. Just like we have on the home page, there's a view here, but on this one, we don't need any views because this is meant to simply redirect us. So logout.php, like that, and I will put my PHP tags, and then all I'm going to do is simply say unset a particular variable and set session user like this. Now, another way to do this is to say session destroy like this, okay, and then you can also run session regenerate, just regenerate ID, so that the ID is reset over the session, because sometimes this ID can be hijacked. So if they regenerate when they log out, that's good, or when they sign in, that would be good to regenerate a session so that they start a clean slate, just in case their session was stolen or something. However, I don't recommend doing things this way. This is good for security. Now, it's just inconveniencing sometimes. Let's say, for example, you regenerating the ID. Let's say when logging in and you do a session destroy and then session regenerate. If, for example, you are running a shopping cart, because all that shopping cart information is saved in the session, and then whenever you do this, that shopping cart information is also destroyed. So you may want your visitor, the next time they come back, to still find the information from their cart. So unless you save the cart information in a different way, then destroying your session might not be a good idea, but you can do it that way nonetheless. So just to be sure that things are working. So here, if the problem with this code is that if I click the logout button twice, I'll get an error here, because the first time unset will work because this exists, but if I click it the second time, this won't exist. So unsetting it would be met with opposition. So instead of just doing that, we need to know if this is set. So we'll say if is set the session there, then unset it like this. Then it's up to you to choose whether you want to destroy the entire session or not. So use these if this doesn't work for you for some reason. And then once we are done here, let's do a redirect. So I'll do redirect, and I want to redirect to the home page. So let's go home, or we can go to the login page like this. Okay, so that's that. And in order to use this, all I have to do is on here I can click logout. So inside the navigation on views, so there's partials and nav, and if I go to the logout, it's already there, so it will work if I click logout, which is nice. All right, so far so good.